And after qualifying this morning, this is how the grid will line up here at Silverstone. It will have the Volvo on pole position, started by Nigel Mansell. Alongside him is going to be Kevin Clark in the number 62 Lamborghini. We're looking forward to seeing that one out there. Second row of the grid is going to be number 5, which is David Harrison. He'll be joined on that second row by Mark Smith and Aaron Moulton-Smith in the number 36 machine. Third row is going to be that of Chris Murphy. He'll have David Harvey for company alongside. The fourth row is going to see then Dylan Popovic once again back out in the Ginetta, and Kevin Bird will start the Charles Hyde Andrew Bird car, the number 1 machine, in 8th position. The fifth row will then see number 17, which is Will Ashmore. He'll be joined by again Dominic Malone. If everything's okay with that car, he'll hopefully be back out for this second race that he's competed in for today. We've also had problems so far for the 11th place car on the grid, which is the Jasper Sapra started car. Hopefully we'll see that BMW out in this one as well. And then furthermore, we're going to have James Collins alongside in 12th position. The 7th row of the grid is going to be Dave Griffin, joined by Ashley Muldoon. So again, names you might be familiar with after the racing we've seen so far today. And then further back from that, we're going to have Jake Severs, joined by Andre Severs this time round, but in a different car. Jake goes first with Simon Evans alongside in 16th position. The next row of the grid is going to be that of row number 9, which is Harry Petch. Had a little bit of a moment there on the formation lap, but Harry is, as we said, back in the right direction. John Cockerton is going to be the man who is alongside on the 9th row of the grid before we see the 10th row headed by Tommy Grout with Roran Tattersall alongside. The 11th row is going to be Klaus Kuikia with Dave Longhurst in that lovely Ford Escort we saw at lunchtime during the stream, which you hopefully would have caught. He'll be sharing that car with Lee Wood for the majority of this one, and then Barry McMahon and Mark Lee on the 12th row with Chris Everall to round out the 25 starters for this Liqui Moly Slick Series.
Yeah, looking forward to this one. They're going to have to work even harder, aren't they, on this formation? We've been talking about how cold it is all day. If you're here at the circuit, you'll know how cold it is. If you're watching on the stream, it's looked a nice sunny day. It is bitterly cold, and with the wind chill, I would say it's hovering around freezing point out there with the wind chill at the moment.
I've seen your hand shaking, Mark. It is cold. I've been there.
I can't hold the microphone. So they're going to have to work even more. These are big, powerful pucker race cars. They need the brakes warm. They need the slick tyres warm. Lots of work to be done on this formation lap.
And unfortunately for them, this race has come at the end of the day when it will be at its probably coldest. Yeah. So they've got, as you said, lots of work to do. As we mentioned there, Harry Petch has a bit of a moment coming out of the assembly area, but he'll be now working as hard as ever towards the back of the field in that green Ginetta to make sure those tyres are up to temperature. But what a mix of cars we have here. We're looking forward to this, as Mark said. Hopefully you've stayed with us here at Silverstone and hopefully on the stream for what should be a cracking conclusion to the Classic Sports Car Club season opener. And with it being slicks, we're going to have 2 formation laps, which is no real surprise with the drop in temperature and how cold it is today here at Silverstone. So on they go for a second formation lap.
Yeah, now whether the clock starts to tick on the second formation lap, yes it does, doesn't surprise me. So in theory the race is underway, but it's underway under safety car conditions, and it will be a 2x2 start to the race.
Because effectively we're also battling sunset, which will depart pretty quickly.
Will depart quickly, yeah. So it's not surprising. So they'll have made sure that all the engines have been through their warm-up processes. The engine will be nice and warm. It is absolutely the tyres and the brakes that we need to get warm. Now we've got Nigel Mansell starting at the wheel of the Volvo that's on pole position. So it might look like a Volvo, but if you were watching the paddock show that we did earlier on, it's a car that was built for the Swedish Touring Car Championship, or the Swedish Championship in reality. It's a space frame car. It's a space frame car. It's a mid-engine Volvo. It's a 7-litre engine that sits behind the firewall and to the rear of Nigel Mansell. He's the AM driver. The pro Craig Dolby will take over it. The car that lines up alongside, you've got Matty Evans, who again, very quick driver, just like Nigel Mansell, but he's the AM in reality, isn't he? And Kevin Clark is the more experienced, and he's not a pro, but he is more of a pro than Matty Evans. So it'd be interesting to see what happens between these two. How can Kevin Clark match Nigel Mansell, who is driving a car that he's more familiar with compared to Kevin Clark, who probably has even more experience than Nigel Mustel, but it's a car that he's unfamiliar with.
Exactly, yeah. There's a lot of unknowns in this one. They're fairly similar age as well, aren't they? They're kind of the same age level, which will be good to put up against each other as well. So, yeah, off the front row is going to be two significant cars here, the Volvo S60, the Lamborghini Huracan as well. So those two should be quick away. And then it's going to be interesting to see if the likes of David Harrison can keep with them, which it might be hard to start with. In qualifying, that car was about 2.5 seconds slower than the Lamborghini, but it was around about 6 seconds slower than the Volvo. But of course, the time would have been set by Craig Dolby, who is not in the car at the minute.
Yeah, and the car in 4th place, Matt, it was one I checked earlier on because we weren't informed, but I did ask him when he won the race earlier on. Mark Smith is starting that number 36 car because we weren't informed of that earlier. So fantastic sight there, mate. I've thoroughly enjoyed since the introduction of the Slick series a few seasons ago, supported by Liqui Moly, and Matty Evans, who's going to take over that Lamborghini on the front row of the grid, is the UK importer for Liqui Moly. It was new for the 2020 season, so we only had a couple of races, or maybe one off race in 2020. So 2021 was really the first full season, and of course COVID has affected its grids. But it's great to see that when we have Slick series, which we have at a few of the meetings, and you know, we wouldn't bring them to Croft or to Cadwell, the tighter circuits. They need to be on the correct circuits for the car. We have lots of support for this series.
It's been a great initiative, isn't it, once again, by the Classic Sports Car Club. It's grown in numbers over the last 2 seasons, as Mark said, and it's a great kind of testing ground, proving ground for what people might do later in the season, where they might be racing later in the season to get a little bit of extra testing in. So it gives them all those hopes.
And also, as I said in the pre-race show, for cars that no longer have a home, you know, because it's an old specification of car, it gives them somewhere to race. Where else could Nigel Mustel race his Volvo, for instance?
Exactly.
Other than in here and maybe Castle Combe GT Championship. Not many other places.
And we're very much welcoming it here to Silverstone for this opening meeting of the Liqui Moly Slick Series. We are good to go. You can see David Harrison there in the number 5 Porsche, very, very close to the back of the front row of the grid. He is eager to keep with the Volvo and the Lamborghini at the start of this race. David Harvey's back out in the Lotus as well. Good to see him here. And we're ready to go for the last race of the day. The time has already started, but the race itself is about to get underway in glorious conditions here at Silverstone, albeit a little bit cold. We are going to go green once those lights go out, which they now do. And it's a good start there by Kevin Clark. He gets the mighty roar of the Lamborghini ahead of the Volvo down towards the first corner, so he will take the whole shot into the corner. I think Nigel Mustel will just about hold on to second place, but as we said, the Porsches are going to be right there hassling him in the early stages, although David Harrison not quite that close to the back of Nigel, down towards Maggots and Beckett's for the first time. And it looks like Mark Smith has slotted his Porsche into 4th place, with Chris Murphy in 5th, and I think Dylan Popovic is there in the Ginetta in 6th place.
I think it's Kevin Bird, isn't it? I think it's the number 1 Porsche that's there in 4th place. Okay. Mark Smith's is the BMW. So, yeah, it is. It's Kevin Bird who'll hand the car over to Chab or Charles Hyde, Andrews Bird, for part 2 of the race. And now, by the look of things, Kevin Bird trying to sneak up the inside of David Harrison. The 2 Porsches going wheel to wheel as they head in towards Stowe Corner. Who's going to come out ahead? There was almost a touch between the pair of them, and they are still side by side as they exit Stowe. But it's Kev Clark that leads. It's Nigel Mustel that's second, and they are still side by side as they head through the chicane at Club, and it will just be David Harrison that hangs on to 3rd place, with Kevin Bird there in 4th, Mark Smith in 5th. Dylan Popovic completes the top 6 at this stage.
Yes, certainly does. One of the Ginettas out wide there, just gets back onto the circuit in relative form there. I think Chris Murphy is the one maybe who's lost out the most there. He's a little bit further back in the field than we were expecting to see him. So there's been a real shuffle in the early stage, and then there might be a problem with Chris Murphy's car because he's continuing to harvest away positions here, and he's going to be passed by the Porsche before too much longer. A lot of smoke down there towards the right-hander of Aintree as well. So we've had lots going on, and it looks like David Harrison has still managed to keep that place ahead of Kevin Bird. So great racing all around here, but out front, great start from Kevin Clark to lead the way.
Yeah, fantastic stuff from Kev Clark. He really got the start beautifully timed, and Nigel Mustel is now feeling a pinch from the Porsches that sit behind, the first of which is David Harrison, the next of which is Kevin Bird, and well, he's still managing to keep both of them behind. Now David Harrison is going to look to driver's left and see that Kevin Bird is going all the way around the outside, and I think it might work for Kevin Bird here. Tries the long way round at Luffield, makes it stick up to 3rd place and through and ahead of David Harrison, so brilliant stuff. Now that car that's up to 3rd started the race down in 8th position at this stage, so it's been a stellar first lap from Kevin Bird, who certainly is more accustomed to the twists and turns of Castle Combe than he is the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, because he's a bit of an expert, a local man, isn't he, from down that part of the country?
Yeah, certainly is, and he almost got the job done on Nigel Mastill towards the end of that lap as well, but of course the corner tightened and he was more worried about getting past David Harrison. So here, as it stands, Kevin Bird in that third place, not comfortable at the minute. He's still being hassled by David Harrison as it stands. Just past us in the pit lane. I can tell you Ginetta has come in of Chris Everall, so Chris unfortunately is into the pits at the end of the first lap for some reason. But yes, Kevin Bird on his way, not quickly onto the back of Nigel Mastill, but he's got some clear air now.
Yeah, so that's the V8 engine, Ginetta G55. It's been running a V8 for a good number of years. I know we see G56s now with a V8 engine, but that's a car that is a 55 that's had a transplant of a 6.2 litre under the bonnet, and I'm afraid that is it for Chris Everall in this race. Dylan Popovic under pressure. Dave Harvey, who we saw win a race earlier on, looking to try and sneak through, but then makes a mistake, and it's the Ferrari 430 of William Ashmore that's able to go through instead. So the 430 goes through. The Lotus now coming under pressure from the next two cars which stack up behind, the first of which is Nigel Greensall, who starts the number 4 BMW this time through, and right behind that is the grey Ford E46, which is Jazz Sapra, who will hand over to Brian Branson for part 2 of the race. And both of those cars looking fairly evenly matched with the drivers that are behind the wheel for the moment, but the race leader will be pressing on down the Wellington Straight, and we've still got this brilliant battle between the Porsches going on for places further back. And I'm afraid another retirement, and is it the same fuel issue as earlier for the BMW of Dominic Malone, which is slowing out on track?
It's trying to restart by the looks of it, but I don't think it's going to have much luck, unfortunately. So it's been a torrid day for Dominic Malone. That car on the Lewis Hamilton Straight just pulling off to the left-hand side, driver's left-hand side, and will hopefully be out of harm's way by the time the leaders get back round on this occasion. But again, we've got some great BMW battles happening here. Good to see the earlier problems for the number 40 Jazz Versapra Brian Branson machine doing well this time round. He's got the likes behind him of Dave Griffin pushing on in the number 34 machine, and Nigel Greensall is also in there as well. So a three-way BMW fight as they come across the line, and that's going to be for what's going to be 9th, 10th and 11th place.
Yep, so that is a good inter-BMW battle. The E46s mixed up with the E90s as well. And we've also, of course, got ahead of them the Lotus fighting away with little Ginetta G50. But the man who's looking to try and work his way through all of them at the moment is Dave Griffin, the number 34 car. We regularly see Dave out racing the E36, don't we, in the UK? His Coca-Cola liveried car, in the hands of the man from the Southern Hemisphere. And he's picked his way through and past Jazz Sapra on that lap, but Jazz is trying to fight back along the Hangar Straight. And closing in on them also with its lights ablaze is Ginetta in the hands of Jake Severs. We saw Jake out in a BMW earlier on, and also out in Volkswagens and other things over the years, but I think it's the first time I've seen him behind the wheel of a Ginetta, which must be new to the family for this year. Yeah,
it looks good, doesn't it? It's a great car and going well in the hands so far of Jake for this first in. He's been a busy man so far today with an older BMW, now back into this Ginetta, looking to make the move on Nigel Greensall, which he's going to do. So the Ginetta has more power through the corner, should have a little bit more power down the straight here, but saying that, Dave Griffin starts to pull away. So this is a nice battle now, which has a Ginetta added into the mix, and we've got double wave yellows, haven't we? Yeah, Dominic Malone's car off to the one side, so it did mean that Jake couldn't make the move there, but he might be thinking about a move down towards the right-hander of Aintree, which he closes onto the back of Dave Griffin. He's trying to have a look at the back of Jazz Versapra. As it stands, none of them are able to pull those moves off.
No, absolutely. So they still remain in the order that they were, and that is Ashley Muldoon, is it not, that's just about going to dig himself out of the gravel. So yeah, just the rear wheels only just in the gravel and just enough to get a little bit of traction and get out of there. So couldn't quite tell where that was out on circuit. Maybe I was thinking, so you think the Vale, do you? Right, okay, so maybe the Vale, he'd backed it into the gravel trap. Kevin Clark, our race leader, is at the moment 10 seconds up the road from Nigel Mustill's Volvo and has just set the fastest lap of the race with a 2 minute 11.840. We've still got a good battle going on for third and fourth place between the two Porsches at the moment, which is going to be Kevin Bird, followed very much so by David Harrison. They're just wiggling their way through Maggots and Beckett's at the moment. It's the all-white Porsche, just ahead of the white Porsche, the one with the green and the yellow stripes down the side.
Yep, certainly is. So those Porsches continue. David Harvey, by the way, staying true to his word from earlier on, gets his pit stops out of the way nice and early. He's just come into the pit. So David Harvey in the Lotus is in, and once those 90 seconds have been served, he'll be back on his way once again. But for now, this Porsche battle is continuing on, and it's a fantastic battle between both Kevin Bird and David Harrison. And every time we turn away from it, we come back, and it's exactly the same, isn't it? There's been no change whatsoever. So this is brilliant to see these two go hammer and tong.
There's nothing between the pair of them. The only thing that is the difference between the pair of them is how Kevin Bird must have either switched the tyre on differently on the formation laps or had far more confidence on that first lap with what was on the tyre.
Yes, to make those places up, he did very well, didn't he? So, since then, David Harrison has responded and manages to drive that Porsche pretty much the same speed now. So, the other defining factor will be what happens in the second half, because we know that Kevin Bird is going to hand that car over to Charles Hyde Andrew Bird. So, we'll see if that disperses the two of them, or if we continue with this tantalising battle as it stands, which again is nothing to choose between the two of them. Oh, big rear end there from David Harrison. Nicely held though.
Lots of arm twirling, because he was so keen to get on the accelerator coming out of the loop that he nearly looped it itself, didn't he? And just about gathered it up. And that's not an easy thing to do. When you react to that and you're in a rear-engine Porsche, you can soon get the pendulum effect and it can get away from you. But yeah, it's just dropped him maybe an extra couple of car lengths away from where he was fighting with Kevin Bird, and has just dropped him slightly more into the clutches of the Ferrari 430 Challenge car of William Ashmore. That's the yellow car with the black and sort of silvery flashes to the bonnet and the roof on it. Over the start-finish line goes Kev Clark. He continues in the lead of the race. Nigel Mustel in the Volvo is now 13 seconds adrift, and again it's another new fastest lap of the race to Kev Clark that time through, 2 minutes 10.705. So the lead advantage has grown to some 13 seconds for Kevin Bird. Now the next thing he needs to worry about is less so David Harrison behind, but more so back markers, because they're starting to catch some of the slower cars now.
Yeah, certainly are. William Ashmore, though, on that previous lap found something quite dramatic there. He did the best lap of the race that he had previously done and was over 2.5 seconds quicker than Kevin Bird. Of course, he was quicker than David Harrison because he had that moment, but 2.5 seconds quicker than Kevin Bird. So the Ferrari F430 you can see there just in the background, the yellow and black machine, is now with these two Porsches. So again, it's taken a little bit longer for the Ferrari to switch its tyres on, or possibly for William Ashmore to have the ability and speed that he had needed. That doesn't look too positive, does it, for Jazz Verstappen? He jumps out the car and is already gesticulating to either Brian Branson or the team that it's not good, and possibly there is still an issue with that car.
Yeah, they had problems earlier on, didn't they? So it's the first time that car's run a paddle shift system, and they had problems in it in one of the races earlier on. Now this is going to be William Ashmore, who is going to try and place a lap on John Cockerton's Porsche. John has been into the pit lane, so that's why he's, I say, in the nicest possible way, a back marker at the moment. That's only because he's out of position. He's got his pit stop out of the way, so he'll want to keep pressing on, but he probably does need to leave a bit of a gap to allow those quicker cars to come through at this stage. That's allowed the Ferrari now to fall back away again from these two Porsches as they head around the loop. I would imagine slightly more cautious with his pressing of the accelerator pedal, David Harrison, that time through. He didn't get the big wiggle off the back of the Porsche that he had on the previous lap. Those two Porsches are still rooted together, and we've still got another 10 minutes of the pit window remaining open, so plenty of time for them to dive into the pits.
Indeed, and it's interesting that Nigel Mustel hasn't jumped in too early and handed over to Craig Dolby, so the confidence is still there for Nigel, which is good to see. So they're going to probably split the race in half, 20 minutes apiece each, I'd say, for both the drivers, because we don't often see Craig Dolby out in these races. And saying that, Nigel Mustel is now into the pit lane, so just as we spoke of him, there is Barry McMahon in the Alpha, going probably considerably slower than he should be normally going.
I thought that, yeah, so I think there's problems for poor old Barry. So he is going to be limping round. He'll be joining Chris Everall as a retirement in this one, who retired with an electrical issue, we gather, Chris Everall. So we'll find out what's happened to the likes of Jazz Sapra, maybe, if that car doesn't reappear. And hopefully we'll get an update as to what's gone wrong with poor old Barry McMahon at the wheel of the Alpha 156, which is very much a touring car compared to the out-and-out sports cars we've got in here. As for the number 40 car, Jazz Sapra, gearbox issue, no fifth gear is the answer. Okay, so that's a problem for them, unfortunately, which has put pay to their final race of the day. Porsche battle continues.
continue. Still Kevin Bird ahead here of David Harrison. And after the slight delayed moment for Will Ashmore, held up behind Jonathan Cockerton, he's now free and starting to close the gap down once more. And of course, it's being held by these two, who are not squabbling over position, but maybe David Harrison just being held up slightly by Kevin Bird, take in different lines through the corner here. So that's frustrating David Harrison a little bit. He gets a good run though through the right-hander of Club. He has a little bit of a look down towards Abbey, but again, the more defensive that Kevin Bird goes, it holds up David Harrison and brings William Ashmore back into the mix.
Yep, all of the time. There's a little flash of the lights there from William Ashmore, so he just wants to let these two know that he's coming. Well, they'll know he's coming. They'll be able to see in their mirrors that yellow peril is just chipping away at the advantage that the Porsche's had over him. It's still, though, for third position, Kevin Bird that leads the way. David Harrison sitting there in fourth place. Then the ever-closing and ever-present danger of the Ferrari that sits behind in the hands of William Ashmore. There's another little look at the inside from David Harrison there coming in towards Brooklands. He's almost prized the door open, but inside line at Brooklands means outside line when you get towards Luffield, and I think that Kevin Bird will have that covered off, and indeed he has. Yeah,
any of them choosing to come into the pit lane. It might be actually wise for David Harrison to come in early, because he's been held up, get into the pit lane, come back out with some clear air, have the chance of overlapping after the pit stop. So I'm not too sure why David Harrison hasn't done that as a solo driver.
I've just seen Dave Harvey bring the Lotus back into the pit lane. The 340R had already been in. Well, he's back in again, I'm afraid. And also there will be a pit lane penalty for speeding in the pit lane. A 60-second penalty will go the way of the number 10 black Porsche of John Cockerton, I'm afraid.
Yeah, not good news at all. Now, the Porsches are going to be held up here by the number 2, Harry Petch Ginetta, which sidesteps his way out of Kevin Bird's eye line. It's going to step out the way of David Harrison and also William Ashmore. So that's good news for all those three cars. Not delayed too much in the process, but Kevin Bird, for the first time in a long time, has had a slight buffer given to him by David Harrison. Not by a huge amount, but by 2 car lengths, I'd say, at the most there. But as he gives that away, William Ashmore is now going to be right onto the tail of that middle car. So here we go again. Another challenge for William Ashmore to try and get through. Can he get it done down towards Vale? No, because David Harrison covers the line. Make sure there is no Ferrari gap to squeeze it through.
No, and this is not a fight for class position either, because the way the class structure works in the Liqui Moly Slick Series is that class A1 cars are cup cars, but newer specification cars. So in other words, the higher or the latest spec models. Because the Ferrari 430 of William Ashmore is, a couple of iterations old now of the Ferrari Challenge spec car, that goes into class A2. So he's arguably keeping an older car up with the newer spec cars. Big
lock up there for Kevin Bird. I think that's the first real mistake we've seen from him. So pressure starting to tell once again from the car, which is at the head of this order. This, of course, is still over what's going to be second position as it stands. Of course, we've had Nigel Mastill into the pit lane. Craig Dolby now behind the wheel, yet to do an outlap, but he's looking to beat a 2:13.0, which was that car's quickest lap. In qualifying, Craig did a 2:03. Not quite going to get there, I don't think.
No, but I know what colour it's going to look like at the end of his first flying lap. It's going to go purple.
Yes.
He's one of those drivers, a bit like Phil Keane, that can get in the car. First flying lap, he'll go in. It looks though the Aussie, who's been living in the UK for a very good number of years, David Harrison, dives to the pit lane this time through, and even had the courtesy to put his indicator on to let the cars around him know what he was doing. So we'll wait and see as to when we see others respond. I think William Ashmore responded and brought the Ferrari into the pit lane on the same lap. So Kevin Bird now, there is the Ferrari just at the back of the shot and comes to rest right near our cameraman there. So Jason, our cameraman, on the RF camera down there in the pit lane, but bringing us some great shots all day. So they'll just adjust the tyre pressures on the car. They'll get it up on the air jacks. They'll check that everything is good and get that car back out there. I also spotted at the back of the shot, Dave Longhurst was in, ready to hand over the Ford Escort Mark 1 to Lee Wood.
Yep, certainly is. So that sits there for the time being. That car's got some work to do, I think, to bring itself back into the order. But Lee Wood should be fairly quick as a peddler once they're rejoined to the circuit. So whilst the Porsche and Ferrari sit in the pit lane, this car of Kevin Bird continues on its way. As we said, it's going to be handed over to Charles Hyde Andrews Bird very shortly, but will it come back out where it was, or will it have lost those 2 places? Well, I think that Porsche and that Ferrari should have probably come in a little bit earlier than they did, just to try and get out of the kind of moments they were being held up by Kevin Bird, but They decided to come in just at the 20-minute mark. When will this car come in? Well, we're now into the second half of the race, so it's only going to be open now, the pit window, for another 4 or so minutes. So it's this lap or the next. That's all they got, and the Ferrari has got ahead of the Porsche in the pit stop.
It has, yeah. So arguably they should all be in the pits for the same amount of time. So either someone's got it right or someone's got it wrong. Now, getting it wrong might be too short or might be too long, but yeah, they should have come out in exactly the same order. And what did I say? As soon as he'd done the first flying lap, I thought it would go purple. Craig Dolby, now there is a pro driver for you. 2 minutes 3.833. Craig Dolby, as I said to you off microphone so many times today, Craig Dolby is one of those drivers that never quite had the budget and never quite got the brakes, was more than capable of getting to Formula One. He's a Super League Formula champion in Europe, and went on to race sports cars and was always indecently quick, but it never quite happened for him, did it, his career?
No, not quite, but great to see him out when he does get out onto the circuit to give us these shows of great fortune that he's had and great skill that he still continues to have as well. And what did I say? I said it won't be anywhere near his qualifying time. He's only 2/10 off what he did in qualifying.
What do you know, Suckling? And now, having taken over his Lamborghini, it is Matty Evans. We caught up with Kev Clark earlier on today in the pre-race paddock walk. Matty Evans was getting to understand this car over testing on Friday, where conditions were a little bit mixed, but he's never driven anything this powerful before. And this Lamborghini Huracan is Super Trofeo specification, so arguably it's quite a difficult car to drive. We have got into the pit lane the number 1 Porsche, so Kevin Bird is in, ready to hand over to Charles Hyde Andrews Bird, or Chab as he's affectionately known, and then we'll have to wait and see as to whether that car feeds back out relative to the cars he was doing battle with, which of course was David Harrison's Porsche, and of course William Ashmore's Ferrari.
Yep, indeed. And there is the Ferrari, which, as we said, is ahead now of the Porsche. So those two cars working their way onto the Wellington straight. So about 30 seconds before they make it back to the start-finish line. And that's when we'll see if the car of Chab can get back out ahead and resume this battle with the Porsche and Ferrari. That's, of course, the only car amongst those three that has a new driver in it. So it's going to take a little bit of time, possibly, to get to grips with the car, get to grips with the temperature of the tyres and everything else that goes with it. But already, that number 1 machine is on his way. So off he goes, down towards the end of the pit lane, and very much looking to rejoin. But will it be ahead of the Ferrari and Porsche or behind it?
You know that Craig Dolby you were talking about, who wouldn't match his qualifying time, Matt?
Has he gone quicker?
He's gone 1.4 seconds quicker than the pole position time. This morning, 2 minutes 3.6. He's just done a 2 minutes 2.2 at the wheel of the Volvo. So the Lamborghini will be leading once we've cycled through all of these pit stops, but it'll be interesting to see how the Volvo goes. And as for the squabbles that were together, the Ferrari has leapfrogged both of the Porsches. William Ashmore was behind them both. Now he's ahead of them both.
Certainly is. I'd say that Craig Dolby wasn't quite awake this morning, was he, to not set that time?
I don't know what he was messing around at qualifying with that time when he put it on pole by 3.8 seconds.
Side by side almost now again with the Porsches. It's going to be Chab this time ahead of David Harrison, but can he hold it? Of course, that car just out of the pit lane, so the tyre temperature would have faded away just slightly there, but he's confident to turn into the corner ahead. And there is the car we've been talking about, with now Craig Dolby behind the wheel, going absolutely fantastically well. Can he go even quicker on this lap? I wouldn't put it past him. 202.2 to beat. We'll see what he does at the end of this lap, and whether he can find himself ahead of Matty Evans by the end of this race, which only has now 15 minutes to go.
David Harrison running very wide there in his pursuits of Chab. We've got a great rumble from that 7-litre Volvo, just the effect sounds coming through our headset as well. If you're circuit side here at Silverstone, wow, it must sound absolutely astonishing, because the rumble even that we're getting following the camera footage is brilliant. Let's just have a quick listen as it turns its way through Lutfield. I like that, Matt. I know on the road we're coming to the end of the introduction of internal combustion engines, and that makes me sad. That's all I'll say.
Shall we just be quiet for the next 14 minutes and watch this Volvo go round? Would that be good?
Cameraman can just follow the Volvo for me. I'm happy.
Did he go any quicker? That's the question. Not quite. It's still a 202 though, so that is pretty good for Craig Dolby. I don't think Kevin Clark has been into the pit lane, because he wouldn't be leading by 1:50, would he? So I don't think we've seen Kevin Clark in.
No, and if he's not in now, it's too late, I'm afraid. In fact, he's just come in now. and there's less than 15 minutes remaining, so he's got a lap too long, is he not?
I think he has, hasn't he? He's messed that one up a little bit on our calculations. I think maybe because the race started and they didn't start it themselves.
I bet he hit the timer at the end of the second lap.
Yes, that's what's happened, hasn't it? So they've miscalculated what the timing screen says to what that stopwatch says. But there we go. He's in now, which is good. He's going to hand that car over to Matty Evans, and we'll see what the gap is when they rejoin. I think it's going to be about 20 seconds between them and Craig Dolby. So there'll be still some work for Craig to do to try and get the lead of this race.
He'll relish that, won't he, yes. Craig Dolby? It's like something that he can get his teeth into, and you look at the lap times that he's doing, and he is absolutely on it, Craig Dolby. He is getting every single second out of that Volvo. Just look at the way the nose dives. He's so hard onto the brakes, so decisive onto the brakes. And when you think that most of the weight on this Volvo is over the rear axle because it's a mid-engine thing, but what an amazing piece of kit. I was so impressed the first time I saw this car out in the UK when I saw Nigel and Craig testing it at Donington Park, the middle of last year or the middle of the year before. It's difficult to remember with COVID and what went on during that period of time, but every time I've seen it subsequently, it just brings a smile to your face, doesn't it?
It is a magnificent piece of kit here, and when it's in those hands of Craig Dolby or Nigel Mastill, it's just being put through its paces, which is fantastic to watch. Again, it shows the competitiveness and the confidence in that of Craig Dolby and the skill he manages to have. Of course, his main job now is a stunt driver and all the rest of it. So through he goes, and he's done a 2:01. We're down to a 2:01.606, which is 2 seconds, over 2 seconds quicker than what he did in qualifying. And here's the battle, because Matty Evans has just come out of the pit lane and Craig Dolby is right there. How long is it going to take for him to get through?
Not long.
No.
He will have him by the time they get to the exit of Chapel Curve. He's going to go all the way around the outside, and then he's going to cut back at the exit of Chapel. And we get to the exit of Chapel Curve. You think I've done this before, wouldn't you? There he goes. He's through on the exit of Chapel Curve and takes up the lead of the race ultimately. And now the thing is how far can he pull away? Matty Evans is fresh into the car. He's driving a car that's unfamiliar to him. He's not a slow driver. Matty Evans is not a slow driver, but he's not a pro. He has a day job, and his day job has never been anything other than hard graft, and Craig Dolby's day job has largely been sitting behind the wheel of racing cars and turning the wheel one way or the other, which is hard. Yeah. But he's so gifted at it. And
chucking it sideways as well. So it's a skill you need to have, isn't it? So on he goes. Craig Dolby now into the lead of the race in that Volvo S60 as it works its way down towards Abbey Corner. There is the Lamborghini Huracan in the hands now of Matty Evans. For third place, it's going to be that Ferrari, isn't it, of William Ashmore. So really good drive here for William, and an older spec Ferrari in Class A2 finds himself third overall, and he's got the better, as we said, of those two Porsches of David Harrison and the Bird and Charles Hyde Andrews Bird as well. So a really good job here for Will after qualifying 9th on the grid.
The other thing that we haven't really alluded to as yet, and I think it's worth mentioning, is because it means that the performance of Nigel Mastill and Craig Dolby together are even more impressive, is because their car sits in Class HC in the Liqui Moly Open Series, and HC is for high capacity, that's what it stands for. So it's high capacity cars, so in other words it's cars of any CC that are likely to outperform the cars in Class A1, which are the Cup spec cars. Now, if you're in HC, you actually have an extra 15 seconds to spend in the pits, so they weren't stationary for 1 minute 30. They were stationary in the pit lane area for 1:45.
Oh, okay. There you go. So, yeah, it's a lot longer to serve, isn't it? And more work to do for them. So, Craig Dolby is pushing on. Oh, he backed off that time, 2:05.3. I know he had to pass, didn't he, Matty Evans in the back marker, so we'll let him off.
He's only 7 seconds quicker than the next car. That's just not good enough, is it?
Brilliant stuff there. So Craig Dolby now leads by 7.8 seconds. So onto the hangar straight he goes once more and head down. Just looking there briefly towards the dashboard. So hopefully everything is okay. Again, that little flicker of the bonnet as it hits the brakes at the end of the hangar straight. Turns its way through on towards the right-hander of Stone. Whilst we looked at the Volvo, we now look back to this Porsche battle, which was as we left it. As we said, every time we look away, we come back, it's exactly the same. Still David Harrison ahead of Chab as it stands.
Yeah, that's heading up towards Copse Corner now. So it's the white car, but with the yellow and the green flashes down the side of it, under pressure from the all-white car of Charles Hyde Andrews Bird, who I thought had a bit more momentum coming out of Copse Corner, but by the time we get to Maggots and Beckett's, normal service is resumed as far as David Harrison is concerned. I say they have been regardless of whether it's been Chad behind the wheel or Kevin Bird, those two Porsches have been remarkably evenly matched, and the only difference was really the opening lap from Kevin Bird. He just was very confident with what he'd done to work those tyres. Now, Charles Hyde-Andrews Bird had a better run coming out of Chapel Curve that time through, but again, hasn't quite either got enough momentum or confidence to stick it up the inside of David Harrison. On the exit of Stowe and in towards the Vale, they are side by side, but again, Charles Hyde-Andrews Bird is on the outside line as they head in towards the braking area for the left and the right flicks down at Club. We've got 9 minutes still to enjoy this little squabble, and since taking the lead of the race, Craig Dolby now has opened up nearly an 8-second lead.
And you can see that David Harrison is doing exactly what Kevin Bird was doing before the pit stop. He's defending and he's putting that car all over the road, and it's slowing him down, which is giving, of course, the number 1 Porsche that chance of getting through. So doing exactly the same in different positions. Yeah,
but just look in the back of these two Porsches, you can see Aaron Moulton-Smith in the BMW is beginning to close in, and that will be for position. Aaron Moulton-Smith in the Beamer last time through, 2 minutes 11.5. The Porsches ahead were over 2 seconds slower. So all of a sudden, we've now got a fight on for 4th, for 5th and for 6th position.
We certainly have. So we lost the Ferrari. That pulled away and has gone off for 3rd place. We've now been joined by a BMW on the rear of it. So yeah, 3 cars once again. All of them are white. Distinctive colours just tell them apart as they work their way through one of the BMW's back markers there as it turns its way in towards the right-hander of Luffield, and that has just delayed Chab, unfortunately, because he's been stuck behind the BMW. It's going to be caught by the next one of the one that's Jason, of course, which is Aaron Moulton-Smith. Can he get his way through in a straight line? Well, he's looking good. He's got some good acceleration. Which way does he go? Well, they're both going to the inside line to pass the back marker. Lights ablaze now for Chab as he turns his way in towards Copse Corner. They both managed just about to get past the 18 Ashley Muldoon BMW, which was in strife in the gravel trap a little bit earlier on. They both safely made their way through, but no way through as of yet for Aaron Moulton-Smith.
No, not as yet. He's done all of the catching. Now he needs to up his game ever more and do the getting past part. And it sounds easy, doesn't it? But no, I'm sure that Chab will just make sure that he gets that Porsche where he needs it to be. He will have worked out already where he has the advantage over the BMW and where he doesn't. It looks as though in a straight line, he's got the grunt a little bit, but through the twiddly parts, maybe the Beamer might be a little bit more planted or set up with its front-engine rear-wheel drive configuration relative to the Porsche. And yeah, it just seems as though it's the corner speed, isn't it? The BMW seems to have the corner speed over the Porsche. So by the time they get back down into the Vale, yeah, BMW is right back on the tailpipes again of the Porsche that lies ahead.
Yep, and now Charles Hyde-Andrews Bird starts to do what David Harrison was doing, is defending, and that puts him on a different line to what he wants to be doing, to try and attack that of David Harrison, and puts him under attack down the straights, because here comes Aaron Moulton-Smith. Can he be late on the brakes in towards the right-hander of Abbey? Yes, he can. So the BMW has taken 1 position away with 6 minutes left on the clock. That now takes him up the order into what's going to be 5th place. Just looking there because William Ashmore has dropped down for some reason. So is that a penalty possibly being applied to the Ferrari?
Begs the question, doesn't it? Yeah, so he's now showing us down in 5th place and under pressure for that 5th position. So yeah, it can only be a penalty has been applied or something like that. Here comes Craig Dolby. I know Mark Tucker, who's been watching the stream, saying, Dolby, only 34 years of age. He seems to have been around forever. Yes, he does. He does. It's just a shame that we don't see as much of him racing with his commitments now to the film industry and the stunt work that he does. It's not that often we get to see Craig Dolby behind the wheel of a car. When we do, it is usually partnered up with Nigel Mustel over the course of the last few years, whether it be this, whether it be the prototype that he was talking about, whether it be the Aquila that Nigel Mustel had for a good period of time. The two of them seem to have had a good little partnership, don't they, over the years?
Yeah, they work well together, which is fantastic to see. And it's nice that Craig Dolby keeps coming back and back and back.
Drive-through penalty for William Ashmore, that was the reason.
Oh, okay. So he's served that now, so he's going to be on the comeback effectively, but how far is he away from the rest? Well, he's still continuing to drop down the order, unfortunately, so not good news for him.
Yeah, it's a long old pit lane at Silverstone if you're doing a drive-through, so the yellow Ferrari has had all of that hard work somewhat undone. However, the hard work still continues coming through Maggots and Becketts and on towards Chapel Curve for Aaron Moulton-Smith, who at the wheel of the E36 BMW, a car that's 30 years old but has been hugely developed, is hounding the Porsches. So up towards the braking area for Stowe they come, and David Harrison still hanging on to it because, of course, the Porsche is much better in a straight line than the Beamer. but Aaron Moulton-Smith is going to be right back with him by the time we get to the Vale again.
Certainly is. This is now going to be for what's going to be third place, isn't it? Because, yeah, into the pits again has come William Ashmore. So this has turned into a disastrous race, unfortunately, for the Ferrari F430 Challenge machine. So he is now effectively down and out of the race and possibly outside the top 10 by the looks of it as well. So not good news at all, but the eyes are focused now very much on this battle as the Porsche has to go defensive of David Harrison. That's not where he wanted to put that car. So now Aaron Moulton-Smith puts his car to the correct line for the next corner up towards the right-hander of Aintree, but David Harrison's going to try and fight back. Is there going to be enough room? No, not quite. Well, there was, I think, but Aaron Moulton-Smith was far enough up the road to be into that third place.
It's amazing, isn't it? A BMW can outgun some Porsches, but that is because that car has been developed so much over the years, and they know that car inside out. David Harrison and I think the likes of the Birds, whether it be Charles Hyde-Andrews Bird and Kevin Bird, haven't had as many hours behind the wheel of their Porsche at all in comparison to how many hours Aaron Moulton-Smith and Mark Smith have had behind the wheel of this BMW. So they are pushing as hard as they possibly can and are now up into what will be third position, a podium overall for that BMW at the moment.
Indeed, Craig Dolby's gone through to complete another lap, and it was only about 10 minutes ago that Matty Evans rejoined the circuit, but since then Craig Dolby has found 31 seconds between him and the Lamborghini Huracan. So it's been another fantastic drive for Craig. 2:01.606 still sits as the fastest lap, although his lap time last time through back down to the 2:11s there.
Yeah, just easing things off. That car did have fuel pressure warnings as it came into the pit lane. I was aware of that, so maybe those fuel pressure issues are just starting to raise their head again. And as for number 17, the Ferrari of William Ashmore, that lost the time because of the drive-through penalty and then came back into the pit lane, it's gone into limp mode for some reason, so that's why that Ferrari is back in the pit lane.
Yeah, not good news for Will. Right, the Porsches are back together. Again, they have not been separated at all through this race, and it's going to be now Chab to try and take it away from David Harrison, but can he hold on for a couple more laps? Because that's all we've got left within this race. Just over 2 minutes left on the clock. Craig Dolby will go across the line very shortly. We can hear him go through there. So on to what will be his last lap of the race, and it's going to be this fight for fourth place, which is going to be the one I'm sure we watch all the way to the checker flag now.
Yeah, because they've been pretty much inseparable for the whole of the race, these two Porsches. David Harrison was having to do all of the hounding earlier on. Well, he is now the man who is being hounded because he's got Charles Hyde-Andrews Bird right behind him. There's traffic just up the road that he need to deal with as well, just as they start to flick their way through Farm and up towards the braking area for Village and then on towards the loop. Staying out of harm's way goes James Collins. He doesn't want to get involved in the squabbles in his first weekend of racing, so just making sure he is well aware of what's going on in his mirrors, looks at the blue flags, gets out of harm's way, which means that that pair fighting over fourth and fifth can continue on their merry way down the Wellington Straight. And as they do so now, you can see ever more Aaron Moulton-Smith is just edging away from them at the wheel of the 3.2 litre six-cylinder engined BMW. Back out onto circuit, but it still looks as though it's in some sort of limp mode, I'm afraid to say, is the Ferrari 430. That's just heading round through Abbey now, having gone down the Lewis Hamilton Straight, but I think body language of the car tells you that Will Ashmore is going to be destined for the pits again, Matt.
Yeah, he might just crawl it round to the checker flag, but no real speed there, unfortunately, for William Ashmore after a great first part of the race. Got himself up into the podium places, but he's not really going to come to much more than that towards the end of this one. There's Dylan Popovic and Dave Griffin, who continue their fight as well. This is for sixth place, so another close fight for a place inside the top 10. Those two are separated by 3/4 of a second. The two Porsches still separated by 2/3 of a second, but it is still for now the car of Harrison who finds himself ahead. So David Harrison on what now is the last lap, because Craig Dolby went through with just under 2 minutes to go. There's less than 10 seconds left on the clock, so the Volvo S60 is not too far away from the checker flag as it works its way through Luffields up towards Woodcote for the last time of asking. And it's great to have Craig Dolby back with Nigel Mastill, because they come through to win the first Liqui Moly Slick Series race of the season here at Silverstone. The checker flag goes away of Craig Dolby. A fantastic drive from both of them to take the victory here after 40 minutes of racing. There will be a penalty by the looks of it to Matty Evans and Kevin Clark there.
Yeah, that would be because we go pitted outside of the pit window, and it's quite a draconian penalty as we still look at that fight that's going on. Charles Hyde Andrew Bird has not given up aspirations of trying to sneak his way through and see whether he can overhaul the deficit that has existed, which hasn't been much, but through will go the Lamborghini to finish second on the road. On corrected times, it might lose that, however.
Yeah, indeed. It could be a quite substantial penalty here for Kevin Clark and Matty Evans, unfortunately, which will drop them out of second place. We'll wait and see. Waiting for Aaron Moulton-Smith to come through in the number 36 BMW, which is not too far away. That will head now down the Wellington Straight in towards the left-hander at Brooklands for the final time. And for now, David Harrison still holds on, but has Chab got anything left in the tank on these last two corners? They turn their way in towards Luffield. There is Mark Smith, who started the car. Aaron Moulton-Smith taking it over. He'll head now towards the line. And where will he be classified? We'll find out when we get the full result. But for what's going to be potentially fourth, maybe third place, David Harrison is just about going to hold on in this Porsche battle. It's been a tremendous fight from start to finish. And it goes the way of David Harrison in the number 5 Porsche. Behind him, in the end, was the Kevin Bird and Charles Hyde Andrews Bird Porsche GT3 Carrera Cup machine, and they will come through in what's going to be fifth place. Might become fourth. We'll have to wait and see. Dylan Popovic goes across the line in the Ginetta. That is ahead of Dave Griffin in his BMW, and the last car on the lead lap should be that of number 72, which is Chris Murphy. So a fantastic way to end the day here at Silverstone on the full Grand Prix circuit, with another great performance there for Nigel Mastill and Craig Dolby. The winning margin was 62 seconds in the end, but I think that was also equated with the penalty given to Matty Evans and Kevin Clark after their slightly late pit stop, which was only 45 seconds off where they should have been, but unfortunately the calculations didn't quite go their way. But again, the great sound of the Volvo S60, great to have it back here in the Classic Sports Car Club, and a nice way to start the season for both Nigel Mastill and Craig Dolby. So Craig thanking everyone here at Silverstone today as he works his way towards the end of the lap. Very shortly we'll hear from him, hopefully with Mark Werrell, who's made his way down to the pit lane for the last time today here at Silverstone. The race result, though, will see the win go the way of Nigel Mastill, and Craig Dolby won in the end by just over 62 seconds, with the Lamborghini Huracan of Kevin Clark and Matty Evans picking up second place. It was the BMW of Mark Smith and Aaron Moulton-Smith coming home in third position, and David Harrison just about held himself off in that Porsche to take fourth place away from Kevin Bird and Charles Hyde Andrews Bird. Dylan Popovic in the Ginetta was home in sixth place. Chris Murphy in the BMW for 7th, ahead of Dave Griffin. Harry Petch did well to recover in his Ginetta, ahead of Warren Tattersall in 10th place. Simon Evans then comes through in 11th, ahead of the Collins and Greensall 12th position BMW. Ashley Muldoon, who was in problems and grief down towards Vale in the early stages, he recovers for 13th place, and also with a penalty, John Cockerton, he rounds out 14th position. Further back in the race, we had 15th place for the Longhurst and Wood Ford Escort, with William Ashmore after the penalty and also the limp mode problems towards the end, finishes in 16th place. 17th place, but unfortunately not finishing with the Severs. Also, Barry McMahon was a non-finish, along with David Harvey. The Sapra and Branson BMW. Dominic Malone BMW can see parked towards the edge of the circuit down along the Hamilton Straight. And Chris Everall in the Ginetta was another one who didn't make it to the end, but all in all, some fantastic racing, not just in the Liqui Moly Slick Series, but also across the course of the day here on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. And very shortly, we're going to hear from our race winners from that last race of the day, because Craig Dolby has made his way into the pit lane very shortly to take off the race helmet, the balaclava and the hands device, and he'll be joined down there very shortly with Mark Werrell. We've got also Matty Evans making his way in the Lamborghini Huracan, and very shortly we'll be joined as well, hopefully by the third place car of Mark Smith and Aaron Moulton-Smith, and we can hear from those drivers now down there with Mark Werrell.
Well, what a brilliant way to end our racing here at Silverstone as we open up our 2023 racing season for the Classic Sports Car Club and their 20th year of racing as well. Chat to our final winner of the day. He didn't do all of the hard work because Nigel started behind the wheel of the car and had it in a handy position for you to bring it home and grab the win, Craig.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Nigel's he's flying now. Every time he gets in the car, it's just progressing. The car's getting quicker, so that's nice. Over the winter, he's worked hard because not only does he like just driving it, he likes modifying and just tweaking and playing with it. And it's nice to jump back in and see the improvements throughout the winter. And you know, it's just good fun. I mean, I was driving around there with the sun going down. And I was thinking, what? This is amazing. You know, like I miss it. I mean, you can't hide it. You know, I kind of had a bit of a lump in my throat. I was thinking, oh, I love racing.
Teary moment, and you know, the back of the car, a 7-litre engine doing all of that beautiful noise at the back of it. But you had a job to do because your car runs in the class it does. You have an extra 15 seconds in the pits compared to everybody else, and you knew you had to get on with it. You went 2 seconds quicker than the pole time. Yeah,
I knew after quali, I knew there was a little bit more there. You know, it's just managing what we've got as a car, understanding it. I mean, I haven't driven since, well, mid last year, so you know, it's also me just building up. It's not my car, so you know, Nigel puts me in there, so I have to respect that. And then you know, I just felt comfortable then when I went out after the stop and just had some fun, really.
With your work commitments in the film industry, are you back for any more this year?
If I can be, I will be. It's going to be difficult, but I think if Nigel's doing something, I'll always be there. And if I'm at home, I'm straight in the car and to a racetrack with him because it's amazing.
Well, great to see you again, Craig. Well done on the win, mate.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Cheers.
There we go. So that's Craig Dolby. We're going to wander over here and have a word with Matty Evans, who is alongside his new toy for this season and this year. Matt, new car for you. I gather the pit stop was a little bit late into the window, so there was a penalty that came your way, but you had enough of a gap to overcome the penalty and it didn't make a difference in the end.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we started our watch when we thought we were supposed to at the end of the first green lap, not the second, so we lost that 2 minutes there, but I don't know what the score is, but nevertheless it was a good race. I mean, Kev had you're freezing. Yeah. But Kev had a great first into the race, so fair play to Kev. So, but I mean, he's much quicker than me, so that's why we put him in first to warm the car for me, for my best chance, so he had a good race.
Just tell us a little bit about this car. Kev was talking to us earlier on an ex-Super Trofeo car. Looking at the colour of it, is the ex-Tom and James Webb car?
Yep, that's correct. We all obviously know Martin and the James boys very well. So, you know, I had it off Martin back in November. I'll be doing GT Cup in it alongside Kev. Kev's going to come with me this year. So, and then we'll bring whatever else we've got to play with in the meantime.
Well done to you, Kevin, as well. And how's the back feeling? You say, you know, you're still struggling a little bit with the recovery after last year. How was it after that stint?
Yeah, I know about it, and I say I got out and I got cramp in my legs and everything. I'm sure 2 or 3 beers and I'll be fine.
Well done, guys. Congratulations. All the best in GT Cup in 2023 as well. Let's wander down and grab a quick word with who we got here. We've got here Harry Petch. Harry, congratulations. G50 slightly outgunned compared to some of these more powerful and more modern machines, but you were pedalling it hard.
Yeah. I mean, just trying to give it all. I didn't realise I'd done quite well. I thought, spinning on the green flag lap was slightly embarrassing. But
I wasn't going to mention that, but as you did, what happened?
I just literally came out of the pits, not paying attention, cold tyres, couldn't see the dash from the sun, and just went round. But then turned out to make it quite good fun to, fight through the field, and it was good. I was chasing off that Porsche, which was pretty hard work, but And
you know what I'm really impressed with? The fact that you've thumbed through the book of racing driver excuses and had them all to hand when we bring the microphone to you. Well done.
Yeah, exactly. Got to have them lined up. So, it's just stupid error. But no, it was good fun, good race, but happy to finish. Yeah, I didn't think there's another few more laps would have probably given him, to be honest. So, it was good.
Well done, Harry. Hope to see you out later on in the season as well. We've got a couple more drivers to chat to down here because Mark Smith started behind the wheel of the number 36 BMW and handed over to Aaron Moulton Smith. Let's bring you both in. We'll start with you, Mark, because you started behind the wheel of the car and the boy took over and did a good job.
Yes, I don't know why you even bother with me actually, because the difference in our pace is like night and day. But it was quite a struggle with the sun coming down in a few places, and I had to do it from memory, I think, or braille. You know, I think there's a corner here. So that was quite character building. But I think everyone was quite slow for the first half because I was looking at my lap times and they weren't particularly nothing to write home about. But I was holding a place.
Holding a place, and that's what it's all about. You handed it over to Aaron Moulton Smith, and Aaron, what were you doing? Far more modern Porsches, and you're just leaving them for dust.
Yeah, no, it's the car is just amazing. So it's all down to the hard work of Amspeed is my team, but it is it's such a good car and so much grip. I think we just can carry so much brakes. We can muller them, and And
Looking on the stream, you know, the Porsches were pulling away down the straights, but mid-corner speed, you had them.
yeah, you kind of ended up tripping over them a little, so it was a bit of a struggle to get past because you had to make a clear move, you couldn't do anything where you're strong. So yeah, no, it was good fun. It's great.
Take the podium with that field.
Yeah, it's great.
Well done, gentlemen. Well done indeed. And that's it. So we've had a brilliant day's racing here at Silverstone. Thank you to Matt Suckling, who joined me in the commentary box all day. I particularly want to say thank you to the marshals who've been out in this bitterly cold weather as well. And thank you to Alpha Live and their team as well. But that's it. The opening round of the season for 2023 for the Classic Sports Car Club is done and dusted. But we'll be back at Snetterton on the 25th and 26th of March. So until then, goodbye.